Hello. The Divine Code reading for January 19th, pages 451 and 452. We are in the chapter, The Prohibition of Endangering Oneself for Another, another, and the obligation to save a person's life. Topic number 5. If one overhears people planning to do evil to another person, it is obligatory to warn the intended victim or to appease the plotters from carrying out their evil plans, if possible, with words, with money, on the condition to be reimbursed. So the money was on the, it's a technical thing. What the condition to be reimbursed is that the person can expend the intended victim's money, but if he doesn't have access to the intended victim's money, he can use his own money to thwart the intended attack and then expect reimbursement from the intended victim. But ideally, he would let the intended victim know that there was a threat there. He could also call the police if that's a reasonable possibility. There is an obligation to get involved. It's an intellectual obligation. It's not a Torah commandment. It's just part of human society and our requirement to have a settled human society. That's the law of Dinam. Would require a person to get involved in a situation like this, and he can, do necessary means to thwart the intended attack against another person. Topic number 6. No, I'm sorry. Footnote on that. Shokan Oruk Harav, Laws of Bodily Damage, topic 8. Okay, topic number 6. If one is in mortal danger, it is permissible to save oneself by expending another person's money. That'd be a third person. Okay, so if someone is in danger and they need resources right away to deal with the danger, it's a life-threatening danger. A person can use someone else's property in that case. Only on condition that the money or property will be returned. If one is not in mortal danger, it is forbidden to save oneself from any disease or suffering by using another person's money or property without permission. By using another person's money or property without permission, even if reimbursement is intended, it is not said that it need not be said that it is forbidden to save one's own money or property by expending that of another person. And that's Shokan Oruk Koshan Mishpat 359.4, Shokan Oruk Harav, Laws of Stealing, topic 2. Okay, so if the person is in, the question is, when is a person allowed to use someone else's property without permission? And then he has to reimburse it afterwards. But when is he allowed to use someone else's property? He needs to get to the hospital. And the neighbor's car is being warmed up with the engine running, and he needs to get to the hospital right away. It's a matter of life or death. He would be allowed to take the neighbor's car to get to the hospital in a matter of serious, a mortal threat against him. He would not be allowed to take the neighbor's car to go to the doctor's visit just for a regular checkup because it's convenient to him, or he's he needs to get something at the hardware store. He can't do it for that reason. And if he needs to get to the bank to because he has a deadline for something, it's going to cost him a lot of money if he misses it, and he sees the cars there, and he's not allowed to just take the car for the sake of his own financial benefit, because we can't do it. We're not allowed to use other people's stuff except if it's a mortal injury, if it's a matter of serious life-threatening or limb-threatening situation, then it's possible to use other people's property, but only under those exceptions. And if it's uncertain whether or not something meets the criteria, if it's in a gray area, then permission would still be given, but it's only within the gray area that the permission might be given. If it's clear that it's necessary, or if it's a gray area whether or not it's necessary, you do what is needed at the moment and then make restitution afterwards. Topic number 7. It is clear, I'm sorry. Just as it is permissible to save oneself by expending another person's money or property, it is likewise permissible to save a third party by using a different person's possessions. So the same way in topic 6, where it talks about saving oneself, the same permission would be given if a person is helping to save another person. See Tractate Sanhedrin 74a, which says that one who is chasing a pursuing attacker to save a victim and damage his property in his chase, he is exempt, and that although by law he should be liable, such a judgment would cause that no one would want to save another person. This is written by Rambam, Laws of Injury, 8:14. It is logical that it is no less permissible to save another person's life by a third person's money than it is to save one's own life in this matter. So technically, if he were to cause the damage to another, or if he were to take the car for a third person, the third person is suffering a heart attack, and he needs the car to rush him to the hospital. It's a matter of life and death. He's allowed to take the car, and even though that would be technically the law of theft, the permission he's given permission, the liability for the theft is pushed aside. He has permission in this case, and this was a decision made by the rabbis that in order to have a functioning society, there has to be cases where we push aside the technical aspect of what needs to be done in order to allow the proper functioning of society, because otherwise nobody would want to take another person's property to save someone else because they'll be held responsible for taking the property. And then people would not be helping each other in cases where someone needs to go to the hospital right away, and no one's going to take the car, and the person unfortunately passes away because nobody wanted to take the car because they didn't want to be responsible for stealing a car. Therefore, the liability is pushed aside so the person can get to the hospital. And there's many cases like this in the rabbinic law. Now, how rabbinic law is being applied into the Noahide law, I'm not exactly sure the criteria that's being given here as to when we say, okay, the rabbis came up with logical explanations, and we assume that the dinim, the courts of the nations are going to also implement similar logical necessity. We assume that the nations are going to do this also. And that's how it's being explained here, being brought through here in the divine code, is we're assuming the nations are going to come up with similar allowances for the proper functioning of society. It appears that such an action with another person's possessions is permissible even if it is in order to save someone's life. No, I'm sorry. Even if is in order to save someone's limb that is not necessary for maintaining his life, and applies whether it is one's own limb or that of a third person. For more details on these points, see part that's in the Laws of Stealing, Chapter 4. So also the same way that we're making permission for the person in the area of saving a life, we are also making permission in the area of saving limb, which would be more of a gray area. So the gray area goes into the the obligation to help a person. Topic number 8. A person is not obligated to donate a kidney or another organ, even if removing the organ is not life-threatening, in order to save another person. This is a matter completely dependent on personal choice. So a kidney, people have 2 kidneys, and you need at least one functioning kidney. And the other one is sort of redundant in some ways. I mean, it's understood the body functions with 2 kidneys. It's possible to live with 1 kidney, but it's dangerous. And sometimes people who need a kidney because they're one, they don't have a functioning kidney at all. They need someone else to donate a kidney to them, and that puts the potential donor in a difficult position because he may not feel comfortable giving over one of his kidneys. So it's stated here that this is merely, there's no obligation to expend a kidney from oneself to help another person. The obligation to help another person does not go that far. There is a area of personal choice, and sometimes these are family, they're matching people up, and it's a family member, and they may decide to do that out of love for their family member. But that's purely an area of personal choice, and where the Noahide code is not requiring that in any way. It is important for a Gentile to have a living will, to be protected from euthanasia. The following is a rabbinically approved living will text for Gentiles. So in the area of today we have living wills, and usually it's given for the purpose of saying I'm allowing donation at a certain point. In the Torah law, a person is considered alive until their heart stops pumping. Usually in cases of organ donation, the person does not, the organs need to be, the way the doctors like to or take the organs out of the body is while the heart is still pumping, which creates serious medical ethical issues, and it, when it's done in the way that it's normally done in hospitals, it's considered murder according to Torah law. And therefore, to prevent that from being allowed, it's highly recommended that Noahides have a living will, to say that that's not permissible, because we're not allowed to give permission to harm oneself in order to help another person. Even if the harming oneself from a purely utilitarian standpoint, the person that is being having their organs harvested and being killed in the process, that person would not have had much of a life going forward. It's still considered life, but from a Torah perspective, and a person is not allowed to give permission for that. So the recommended rabbinically approved living will, Jewish law to govern healthcare decisions. I am a Gentile. It is my desire, and I thereby direct that all healthcare decisions made for me be made pursuant to Jewish law, as it pertains to Gentiles, as determined in accordance with strict Orthodox interpretation and tradition, by way of example, and without limiting in any way the way of the generality of the foregoing. It is my wish that Jewish law, as it pertains to Gentiles, should dictate the course of my health care in respect to such matters as performance and non-performance of cardiopulmonary resuscitation. If I suffer cardiac or respiratory arrest, initiation or discontinuation of any particular course of medical treatment or other form of life support maintenance, including tube delivered nutrition and hydration, and method of timing and determination of death. If any question arises as to these requirements, I direct my agent to consult with, and then it would be a Rob's name that the person should be consulting when these issues come up. And from what I understand, the law would be the same as the Jewish law the Torah law for Jews in regard to the end of life issues. She responds of Radbaz, Volume 3, Part 627, who writes clearly that one is not obligated to give up a limb in order to save another person. This is also written by Yad Avraham Shulchan Aruch Yeridea, chapter 157, who proves it from Rambam, Laws of Marriage, chapter 10. See also Samaic Laws of Murderers, Chapter 7, and Igrit Moshe Yeridea, Volume 2, Chapter 174. Nevertheless, it seems that just as one may remove an organ to save one's own life, it is also permissible to donate an organ to save another person's life. The reasoning is cited by Civit Eleazar, Volume 9, Chapter 45, and Volume 10, Chapter 25, Topic 7. So there is permission to donate an organ. That's not the concern. This can also be seen from Tamar's willingness to give up her own life rather than embarrass Judah, for she would be permitted to give up her life. If she could be permitted to give up her life for his honor, it is surely permissible for one to donate a limb to save another's life. Rabbi Zalman Nehemiah Goldberg notes that the proof from Yad Avraham is that it is not obligated to donate an organ that is necessary for life, but it may be obligatory to donate a kidney. It is unclear if one must donate a blood to save another. It may be obligatory since it causes no loss to the donor. So in cases, these are all cases where a person might be obligated. So there is a possibility that there's an obligation to donate a kidney. It's just not stated as such as an obligation because it creates a lot of duress for a person. Donating blood does not create the same amount of duress, and therefore that obligation might actually stand as far as donating blood. If there's a necessity that they need the person's blood for the functioning healthcare system, they could say it's obligatory to give. It's a moral obligation to give blood. However, in the cases of where an end of life situation, where they want to take the lungs out of a person or a heart out of a person, and doing so actually causes the death of the person, in that case, it's not permissible to kill a person through the action of taking out the organs, and therefore that's still not permitted within Torah law, and medicine will just have to figure out better ways to work with that. No. However, to remove the heart or liver from a terminally ill person as a transplant for another person is fully murder, even if the donor will die in a short time. This permission applies even if the second person will also not live without the donated organ, since certainly there is no permission for one to save one person's life by taking another person's life. So this is the seriousness of it, is that even if you have two patients right next to each other, one person has a perfectly functional liver, and the other person needs a liver and can live a full life without it, but without the liver, he's going to die. And the two patients are next to each other. The doctor cannot take the liver from the terminally ill person who is close to death and give it to the other person until the person is dead. And doctors are going to have to work out ways that it's possible to do it at the correct time. And that's going to require more work for the doctors, but that's what has to be done. We can't take the liver from the person until they are halachically in a dead state. Igor Moshe Uridea, Volume 2, Chapter 174. Yeah. Thank you.